So as you just heard, President Lee is now heading home after wrapping up his 5-day trip to New York. For more on this, we're joined today by Dr. Stephen Noerper, President of Asia Dialogue. Dr. Noerper, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you.
So President Lee has now wrapped up his trip to New York. What did he gain from this visit, and would you say it was a success overall?
It was a huge success for both the president and really, in a much larger perspective, for Korea. It sounded all the right notes. Korea is back on the global stage after a confusing earlier part of the year. It was out in a very strong and affirmative way. A lot was said about prospects for peace and diplomacy on the Korean Peninsula. A lot was said on South Korea's behalf in terms of its role as a beacon of democracy, in terms of its economic opportunity, and the fact that the address at the United Nations was followed by chairing of a UN Security Council session for the first time, that on AI. A very key issue on the international agenda. And then, of course, followed up with a lot of sidebar meetings with important dignitaries, including the U.S. Treasury Secretary, and then, of course, the appearance on the U.S. Stock Exchange. All in all, an extremely high-profile visit by the account of any Korean president, and one, again, very much in the national interest as it propels Korea forward on the stage with the APEC summit next in Gyeongju toward the end of this next month. So Korea back and roaring, and really a tremendous job in New York City.
Right, and in his UN General Assembly speech, President Lee Jae-myung said South Korea is back on track and it's ready to sort of play its role on the international community. And he also talked about how he's willing to ease tensions with North Korea. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, he seemed to have a plan that is very pragmatic. He expressed a support for gradualism in the process and the idea of cooperation and exchange as good next steps with denuclearization and end goal, a final goal. And in fact, the process of end was emphasized. The idea that there would be a more gradual approach, suggestion of an acceptance of a freeze should Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un meet and move in that direction. And all in all, a very clever approach at trying to increase international validity to underscore peace and security around the Korean Peninsula. This is important to have done at the United Nations because the good offices of the Secretary General, very skilled Undersecretary General for Political Affairs, and her team, really people in the wings ready to help facilitate inter-Korean dialogue, a very important offering to the process, and very important to have the attention of the international community on this, a statement that really was centrist, that was very pragmatic, and seems to be very practical in the international community's eyes. So eventually denuclearization, but really more they can go into it, disarmament, drawback, a freeze, and certainly the interest in normalization, cooperation, exchange, really all very key elements to build trust. And it was the trust-building element that he really underscored.
I see. And now that his New York visit's over, the next major diplomatic event would be the APEC leaders meeting in South Korea in Gyeongju. Do you think we could see a second meeting between President Lee Jae-myung and Donald Trump?
Oh, I think you absolutely will see the U.S. president very eager. He had a very good first meeting with President Yi, and I think all the world will be at Korea's stage at that event, certainly in terms of the regional players and regional leadership. I think the Trump administration eyes not only that meeting with President Yi, but perhaps a stop first in Japan to gauge the new prime minister and to reassert on that level of U.S., Korean, and Japanese cooperation. And then, of course, Trump would very much like a sit-down with Kim Jong-un at the border or in the DPRK, or perhaps at a third location like Moscow. And Trump is also eyeing a meeting with Xi Jinping in China and would very much like to be in Beijing before the end of the year. So a lot of potential prospects for the U.S. president on the Northeast Asia stage. And what South Korea is doing by hosting APEC is incredibly important.
I guess we'll have to see how that goes. All right, Dr. Noerper, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your insight and time as always.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.